The adventure begins at the most iconic natural feature in England, the White Cliffs of Dover, the best-known rock face in the country and renowned the world over. They were so widely recognized it's believed the cliffs even gave our island its earliest name, Albion, from albus, the Latin word for white. Ancient mariners used the cliffs as a landmark, and for countless generations of travellers, the White Cliffs of Dover were their last sight of England when they departed, and their first when they returned. Many people have been moved by the vision of the towering 400-foot chalk cliffs. Nature began the painstaking job of building this icon of England around 100 million years ago, when southern England was submerged by a shallow tropical sea teeming with microscopic life. Billions upon billions of the calcite shells of these tiny creatures settled on the seabed, and over several million years were compacted into a layer of solid chalk 700 feet thick. A violent earthquake then forced the land upwards to form the North Downs of England and expose the chalked face at its edge. This picture was completed about 13,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, when melting ice caps caused sea levels to rise by up to 300 feet. Britain became an island, separated from the continent by the English Channel, with the Cliffs of Dover a boundary between England and the outside world. The White Cliffs face continental Europe across the narrowest part of the English Channel, and from earliest times the Strait of Dover was a busy trading route. This is now the busiest seaway in the world, used by more than 500 vessels a day. But some of those who've made the journey have come with more sinister motives than honest trade. In the year 55 BC, on the 23rd of August, 2 Roman legions led by Julius Caesar crossed the Channel to capture the island of Britannia. As the fleet approached Dover, thousands of woad-painted warriors baying for Roman blood appeared along the cliffs, and Julius Caesar decided to try his luck further around the coast. His ill-fated invasion eventually failed, and it was another 88 years before the mighty Roman Empire conquered this much-prized island. The Romans built a fort on East Cliff to guard the Strait of Dover, and a castle has stood there ever since. Dover was described as the key to England, and for nearly 2,000 years these cliffs have commanded the gateway to our country. In that time they have stood firm against the Spanish Armada, Napoleon's France, and Hitler's Germany.
The Straits of Dover, no wider than the St. Lawrence, no wider than the Mississippi. On one side, the greatest machine of conquest of all time. On the other, the white ramparts of Britain. On this narrow strip of water, the eyes of the whole British Commonwealth are fixed. World history may soon be shaped here.
In the dark days of 1940, when Britain teetered on the brink of defeat, the White Cliffs of Dover became a beacon of hope for the English people.
The shepherd will tend his sheep, the valley will bloom again, and Jimmy will go to sleep in his own little room again. white cliffs of Dover. Tomorrow.
Sheep did get tended, and Jimmies did sleep in their own little rooms again. But there have never been, and never will be, actual bluebirds flying over these cliffs. Plenty of seagulls, but no bluebirds. The bluebirds of the song were the blue-uniformed pilots of the RAF who fought valiantly in the skies above Dover during the Battle of Britain. Against the odds, the RAF repelled Hitler's airborne invasion, and Vera Lynn's song secured for these cliffs a special place in the hearts of the English people. Forevermore, they will be a symbol of optimism and defiance. The role of the White Cliffs in the war, though, was more than just symbolic. After their conquest of France, the Germans placed long-range artillery on the coast from where they could bombard the port of Dover. To counter the threat, Winston Churchill ordered similar weapons to be installed along the White Cliffs. The first gun was named Winnie after the Prime Minister, and it fired its first shell into Europe in August 1940. For the next 4 years, a long-range gunnery duel raged across the Channel. German shelling of Dover Strait earned it the nickname Hellfire Corner. In the town itself, the German guns caused 216 civilian deaths and damaged more than 10,000 properties. By 1944, the war had turned in favor of the Allies, and plans were laid for the invasion of occupied Europe. By June of that year, the largest seaborne invasion force in history was gathered along the south coast of England. But in Dover, a rather unusual array of machinery was assembled. From a distance, they looked like landing craft, armored vehicles and tanks. On closer inspection, they were made of wood, canvas, and inflatable rubber. A total of 255 fake vessels were moored in Dover Harbour, all part of an elaborate hoax to convince the German commanders that an invasion of Calais would be launched from Dover. Meanwhile, the real invasion force was massed further along the south coast and was heading for Normandy. The hoax was successful beyond the wildest hopes of the Allies. The Germans concentrated their defences around Calais, and by the time they realized the deception, it was too late. The Normandy bridgehead had been secured, and Allied troops were fighting their way across northern France. Dover had played a major part in the defence of Britain and ultimate victory, and relics of its defiance are still visible today. The famous cliffs, however, are facing a new conflict. For thousands of years, they've stood watch over the Channel, defiant custodians of England, but they're not as sturdy as we might imagine. Wind, rain, and frost are eroding the cliffs by up to an inch every year, about 50 times faster than the chalk was created. The chunks of rock that fall from the cliffs are gradually broken down by the action of the sea. The sediment is carried away and eventually settles to begin building new rocks elsewhere. All part of a relentless cycle as Mother Nature continues her moulding of our planet.